Welcome to Early Intervention Matters, the podcast that helps parents, teachers, and health professionals understand the diagnosis, treatment, care, and support of children with autism, ADHD, Tourette's, and other neurodevelopmental challenges. Your host, Dr. Inyang Takon, is a consultant neurodevelopment pediatrician, and she will provide insight through interviews, answering questions, and breaking down complicated topics. By sharing stories from parents and professionals in the field, we hope to make sense of what can be an overwhelming topic. Early intervention is crucial with children with developmental difficulties. Yes, early intervention matters. And now, here's your host, Dr. Inyang Takon.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. You're welcome to Early Intervention Matters podcast. This is a platform where we discuss developmental conditions and how it impacts on the child and family, and it's where science meets practical day-to-day living. So today we are very pleased and I'm particularly excited to have Marc join us on this platform. I was very happy to have met Marc on the Podmatch platform, and I was very impressed by all the work he's been doing and his story. So we're going to be discussing a lot of that during the conversation. So thank you, Marc, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you. So before we go, Marc, can you please introduce yourself to our guest?
Sure. My name is Marc Paisant. I'm based right north of Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. And currently, other than working my 9-to-5 job, I am a coach and a personal trainer, and I'm a husband and a father to two preteen girls now, 12 and 11. So as anybody can imagine, it is very fun being the only man in the house and dealing with hormones every day. But I'm also a former collegiate athlete. I played soccer over at Clemson in South Carolina, and a podcast host. So I have a podcast called Relatively Normal. And other than that, I'm a huge advocate of mental health and talking about it and being open and honest about it, especially for Black men, and making sure that we know that we're heard and we're understood and people do care about us.
Well, thank you so much. I would say it's a great blessing to have two girls. I have two daughters as well. So it's a lovely journey, which you will enjoy.
Yes. Oh, it's been great so far. They're wonderful. It's fun to watch them grow into their little personalities.
Yeah, it's definitely good. Great. Thank you so much. Yes, when I think what took me with your story, which was very compelling, and was you talked about the version of you when you had some difficulties with your mental health, your weight, and what can you still remember what that time really felt like, and can you talk us a bit through that?
Oh yeah, I can definitely remember, and I'll never forget what that time was like, because that's what keeps me on my journey today. Like, I never want to forget that version of myself, and through therapy, I was able to kind of forgive that version of myself, because honestly, when I go back and think about it, I was in my and trying to find myself and not really sticking to a schedule. I mentioned I was an athlete before, so I always had coaches and trainers telling me to keep in shape or getting me to stay on a target. And once I was on my own, it just went totally out the window. Like I didn't stick to any type of plan, and I started to really have issues with my body image because I wasn't the fit athlete that I used to be. And that was my identity. Like, I was an athlete. I was a soccer player. I was a basketball player. And part of that identity came with like having a body that meant you were in shape. And so as I started gaining the weight and trying to start to run or go to the gym, I would always stop myself. And I would always, my stress relief was eating bad food. And my stress relief may have been going out to the bar and having a couple drinks. And my stress relief was, staying up all night and watching movies. So as I look back on that person, he wasn't per se a bad person, but I wasn't good to myself. Like, I didn't prioritize myself. I didn't think I was worth it. I didn't, every time I'd get a little bigger, I would think they make my size, so I should be fine. And that just kept me sane for the time. But on the flip side of that, I was working dead end jobs. Didn't have a great relationship with my family at the time. I wasn't really hanging out with great people. And one of those things might be, fine or okay. But once you start compounding all that stuff, you have the food, the drinking, the poor relationships, the bad jobs, the poor body image issues. Like once that starts
Mm.
building up, you look back and you're like, man, you were putting yourself through a lot. So yeah, I
Mm.
always that was who I was. And I don't want to go back and change him at all. Like
Mm.
he's the reason I am the person I am today.
That's such a wonderful story because when I look in my clinic, actually, I can relate to lots of young people who are in that same spot. And sometimes, like you said, it's so easy for one thing to keep adding on to the other.
Mhm.
So because you just feel quite low and trying to work through that is not a simple fix. And so what then helped you to step out of there in terms of what was the turning point for you?
So and it's probably a term that you're familiar with and everybody else is when it came to my either, anxiety, depression, it was high functioning. Like I did my best. No one knew about anything. Like everyone
Mm.
figured Mark was okay. And I had a smile on my face. I made people laugh. I made sure I brought no one into my struggles. I wanted to make sure I
Mm.
wasn't the reason anybody else was down. And that in itself was absolutely so frustrating and hard to deal with. I just remember just being so overwhelmed and exhausted most days when I
Mm.
did that. And the funny part about that kind of exhaustion is yeah, I would be exhausted and then I'd go to bed and be up all night because my brain was
Mm.
just racing. So much anxiety
Yeah.
thinking about what I had done or what I was going to do. It was not a great mental health period for me. But I remember there was one moment I was driving a work vehicle, and I've said this story a couple times where I was driving, outside of Baltimore, Maryland, and I just wanted to veer the truck into oncoming traffic. Like I just wanted to, I was literally seconds away from doing it.
Wow.
I figured in my head, like if I did this, someone has to listen. Someone has to ask me
Wow.
what's wrong. And I didn't care if I hurt myself, if I hurt someone else. I have to do something so someone can hear me.
Mm.
And I think the only reason I didn't do it is because it was a work vehicle and I didn't want to have to deal with work. And regardless of what the reason is, I'm glad it didn't happen.
Mm.
And at that moment, I was like, okay, I have to talk to somebody. Like, I have to talk to somebody. I don't want to keep living
Mm.
this life where I have to put on smiles for everyone and then go home and just be in this dark, dark place. And, I don't want anybody to get to that point in life, but
Mm.
that's literally the point I got to.
Wow. And that must have scared you, wasn't
Oh,
it?
yes. Yes,
Yeah,
it scared
just
me a lot.
thinking back, I think sometimes you do things when I've spoken to some people who've been through that phase, I think that really jolts them after and scares them. And, yeah, we're so thankful that that
Mhm,
never, happened. And it just reflects how many people, young and older people, are walking around with so
mhm.
much pressure
Yep.
and everyone sees them and says they're okay. I've seen this in my clinic when um, young people who have even been to the well-being services, and they go there and they're smiling and looking okay, and the professionals there say he's looking fine. He was able
Mhm,
to have a conversation with me. He didn't look stressed. He didn't look like he had any risk,
mhm,
and they discharge them and say we don't think he's high risk now, and that's because people are just looking at the person there thinking everything is okay. And just hearing your description of how everybody else was perceiving you,
mhm.
whereas you were facing that internal pressure, I think is something that we really need to be careful about. And how did ADHD come into the story?
I had all the signs when I was a kid of ADHD, and one teacher had mentioned it once when I believe I was in ninth grade.
Mm.
And my mother, being the proud mother she was, is like, no, my kid doesn't have ADD. Nothing's wrong with him. He's fine. He just needs to apply himself. And that was like the last conversation we had about it. Like that was it. Like we didn't talk about it anymore. And so I went through my entire adult life up into my late 30s or early 40s of like just really having to do everything possible to focus and get through things and make sure and again, with the amount of anxiety I had, I was overthinking everything. So small projects, people would come to me and say, "Oh, Mark, you did such a good job on this." They didn't know I had been, thinking about it for a week and putting together so many different scenarios because I tried to think of every different scenario that could happen once I turned this in or once I said this thing so I was over prepared for everything. I had, just one of the therapists I had when I didn't stay with her for long. I was in a good spot in my life, but she said, I really think that you should talk to your doctor about ADHD and, cause I can tell there's some things that you're going through. And at this time in my life, I was at a startup company, and anybody who's worked at a startup knows you may have a job title, but you're doing everything. And I remember just working 14 and 16-hour days and just thinking, I didn't accomplish anything today. Like, I can't tell you one thing I accomplished today. And it was so hard for me to stay on task. And so finally, one day I had a conversation with my doctor and he told me, he's like, listen, I used to be a person who was against this stuff. And I thought kids just had to apply themselves and try harder. But he's like, I have seen C- students go to A students just because they have the ability to focus now and they have the ability to do that. And he's like, I want you to try it. So I tried it and it was almost instantaneous. Within an hour, I remember just having this level of focus I've never had in my life. And everything, it was like being, nearsighted or farsighted, and finally someone giving you those pair of glasses that helped you out. And the other thing, which is not common, because a lot of people with anxiety, it will actually, give them more anxiety because it's a stimulant. All my anxiety went away. Like every bit of anxiety went. I was focused. I had a plan in place. I was able to get through my work. I was able to focus on what I need to focus on. And growing up, my oldest daughter she's been diagnosed with ADHD, and seeing how it, evolves in little girls versus boys.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. None of the studies that were done in the past were done on girls. They were done on all boys.
You were done on the running around boys.
Yes. Yeah. The H part of it was the part that was like the trigger. And my daughter's not really that hyper. She's actually kind of an introvert, but you can tell with the impulse control is where she has the issues. And our pediatrician told us this is something you guys need to actually think about and talk about with her, because the moment she starts driving a car or having more responsibilities, when is she going to decide that, oh, I don't need to, stop at this stop sign, or I'm just going to blow through this red light because whatever. And so it's interesting to watch her grow up with, with we call it a superpower that she got from her dad, because it is genetics that have passed it down to her. But it's been interesting what medication has done for me. We haven't put her on it yet because we're really trying to have those conversations at those moments with her.
And if you go back to, you said there was a teacher that mentioned it, which your mom didn't want.
Teacher. The teacher did, yes.
Yeah. What did she notice then?
There was a class that I was in to just to help me with, I think, reading and writing skills, something like that. It wasn't that I was bad at it. It was just an extra. It was just an extra class that you could put your child. And believe me, my mother, if there's any extra work that her sons could have done, she was putting us in. So, and I remember in that class, she just noticed, the way I wrote was really fast. It was just I couldn't get words from my head to the paper fast enough. There was no thought involved. It was just people could understand it, but I would, just have run-on sentences. I would when I was trying to explain myself, it was very just all over the place. There was no one point. So that's the thing she noticed. And all she said literally was hey, I think you may want to have, Marc checked out for ADD, and immediately my mom was like, nah, nope.
So your mom was of the school of nothing,
She was at school like Marc just needs to try harder. So yeah.
like so many
Yes.
moms. Yeah. And in your journey, have you seen lots of men who've gone forward for assessments and
Not really. It's funny. I have two friends now who we openly talk about ADHD and like how, and I remember I've never had that in my life. Like I never had anybody I talked to about, ADHD or Adderall or Ritalin or I forgot the name of the new drug that's out now, and it's kind of cool because it's just a normal conversation. It's
Mm,
not one of those that's, hey man, come over here. It's like, hey, in the middle of the conversation, we'll talk about, how we couldn't focus one day or how the drug helped us or, what.
mm,
And I think that is, I can't even imagine doing that 20 years ago where a man
yeah,
openly and honestly talks about,
yeah,
because I remember in college, I had conversations with all women about their ADD, which is crazy to think about. They didn't really do many studies on women back then,
yeah,
but I never had it with a man.
yeah. So do you think that there are quite a number of people who, do you think lots more people believe in it and lots more men will go forward now to get assessed? Or do you still find the skeptics and the ones who still say there's nothing wrong with me?
I'm sure more men specifically are talking about it, but it's still with the level of social media reach we have now. Like
Mm,
it was just the other day I saw a post of some man talking about just so blatantly, like he's so right about it, talking about you don't need medication for ADD. This is what you have to do. And when I see things like that, it upsets me because I don't mind somebody's point of view. I don't mind somebody's opinion, but I never try to speak in a way where it's like I am the end all be all. If someone wants to have an opinion like, hey, before you try any type of prescription drugs, like, why don't you try to limit your sugar? Or why don't you try to be more active? Or why don't you try to
yeah,
take, like, I don't mind things like that.
yeah,
But there's still like men, a lot of men in the world, especially United States, like crave that like big bad wolf persona. They crave that bravado. They crave that,
mm,
hey, when I walk into a room, I want every woman in here to want to be with me and every man want to be me. And
mm,
it's like, why?
mm.
Have you ever just sat down and like, what have you gone through in your past
Absolutely.
that has kept you from just enjoying life and being who? Because I know there's men out there that are having trouble focusing or having trouble with their body image or having trouble just, having the courage to speak up and
Yeah,
say, hey, I'm not feeling it myself today.
yeah,
But a lot of us would still rather just put that mask on and pretend everything is okay. And
absolutely.
that bothers me.
I never used to, in the past, I never used to like jump in and comment when I saw such posts, but recently I can't hold it.
Mhm.
So I go in and say, you are not living the lives of the people who are impaired by this condition. So please keep your views to yourself
Mhm.
because what you're saying here would actually stop somebody else who would have gone for an assessment and they start feeling, oh, maybe I don't need to go.
Mhm.
And when I've seen young people, a lot of young people I've seen, when I've spoken to their parents, one of the things that has stopped them from actually getting help when they were younger was influences from other people who told the parent, oh, don't listen to them.
Mhm.
Schools would have pointed that out to the parents, and parents would mention it to their community. And the next minute they're saying, why do you want to take your child to
Mm,
to go and get an
uh,
assessment? Why do you want them to be labeled? It is very, very upsetting because I think it's the impact this has
yeah,
on other people that I find really frustrating. And I'm sure it must be the same for you, the frustration that you must feel.
it is. And I would never want to be the reason why someone doesn't get help.
Yeah.
Um, and I never want, like, you'll never hear anybody say, well, I'm not going to do this because Mark said not to do it or Mark said, like, listen, We're all unique. We're all different. We all have different
Yeah.
we different coping mechanisms for everything we're going through. Just be yourself and open up, and you don't have to listen to anyone that's
Yeah.
telling you. Anybody who tells you that they 100% know this will help or this will, then that's a red flag right there.
Completely. Completely. So what do you usually say to people who say, I don't believe in ADHD or it's overdiagnosed? What do you say to them?
Honestly, and I don't know if this is the answer you want. I really don't say anything to them. Like, I don't give them the time of day. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, the few times that I have engaged in that conversation, there is that one the school of thought that it's like, oh, almost nobody had ADHD when I was growing up, and now every kid has it. And it's like, well, no, that's. I mean, if you think about
Yeah.
it like a spectrum, you can go from zero ADHD to 100%. So it's like it's kind of like a spectrum, but at the same time, just like autism, like there's different forms that we're finding or different criteria
Mm.
that people are running into. But I have come to the point in my life where I really don't care what people think
Mm.
about it. I know myself. I know the person I am.
Mm.
I live with my daughter. I see the issues. Like, I understand a 12-year-old is not going to listen to everything I say, but when I see her having these impulses that you can tell off the bat, like she's having trouble controlling that.
Mm.
She knows something bad's going to happen if she
Mm.
continues it, but she keeps doing it. Like, we have to at least talk about it and make sure, I never want her to feel like something's wrong with her.
Yeah,
And if
absolutely.
I continue with the dialogue that, oh, no such thing as what you're going, come on, you need to get it together and work harder. Like, how do you think she's going to feel when she grows
Yeah.
up, when she talks about me to other people?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be good.
And that's the trauma a lot of the
Hmm.
people have faced because all through they've thought about themselves as not good enough because
Hmm.
people have been saying try harder, try harder. I mean, usually it frustrates me when even the schools write that in
Hmm.
questionnaires when I send questionnaires to the schools to get information on children. You would see some saying, well, he needs to work harder, he needs to try harder. And I'm like, can't you pick this up? Can't you
Yes.
see the reason why they're struggling? So there's still a lot of work for us to do in terms of raising that awareness, I think,
Hmm.
which is what we are all doing in this space,
Yes.
is trying to make that conversation more open so that people can actually see that it's not making you a lesser person, actually it's
Hmm.
making you a more functional person.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So coming to the Black community, so you've talked a lot about stigma around therapy and mental health in the Black community. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
I'm coming from a North American standpoint, United States, so I can't speak for other parts of the world because it was funny. One of my friends who's from Kenya, he told me like, Mark, I didn't know I was black till I got to America, and I was like, yeah, I can understand that, but I remember the strongest man I know in my life is my dad. Still is. Like, it is the strongest man I know. And this is a man one generation from Jim Crow. I'm one generation from sit-ins. I'm one generation from, some of the most terrible rules of law that have happened in this country. And hopefully we're not going back. But then again, this isn't a political show. I won't go there. But
Yeah.
I remember, every movie that you watch, every animated movie that takes you back in time where there was the black household, whether it's a household that was in slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, whatever it was. The role of the black man was simple. Like, you are the provider and the protector. That's what you
Yeah.
are. And I totally get that. I'm not saying that's not what his job should have been, but I can't imagine how many black men before me were struggling and just wanted one day to say, I can't do it today. Like, I
Mm.
don't have it in me today. Like, I just need a break.
Mm.
And they never got a chance to do that. And so when they never got a chance to do that, what are their sons going to emulate? Their sons are going to emulate the same behavior. Okay. Now
Mm.
I see my dad, like, oh, it's 100 degrees and he's out in the fields all day. He came home from work and he didn't complain once. And that's what I have to be, strong and stoic, strong and stoic. And inside, this man is dying. Inside, he just needs a little bit of relief.
Yeah.
And the moment his son may show some type of softness or vulnerability, that immediately is punishment. No son of mine is going to act this way. You're going to have a family one day. You have to be strong. You have to provide. You have to. And so it just goes generation by generation by generation. And it happened, the thing I remember the most vivid of my dad is the moment I saw him cry, because I only saw it once in my life. I only saw it once. Like, there's so many memories I have of my father, but I only saw him cry once. And then the second time I saw him cry, of course, when my mother passed away, but as I was an adult, but as a child, he cried once. And when I tell you, like, my brother and I didn't know how to react, we didn't know what to do. Like, it didn't make sense to us. Like, I understand mom, I understand, our older sister, I understand that, but why is the strongest man in the world crying? And I'll never, that's such a vivid memory. And as I'm growing up, I'm thinking to myself, I really don't have those same behaviors. Like, my brother is more like my dad. Like, he's the stoic, strong one. Do I need to change? Do I need to become more like that? Or what do I do? And now, saying it out loud, like, I can see why I was so impacted by that, and trying to be someone I wasn't, because I was the mama's boy. Like, I was the soft kid. I was the vulnerable one. I was the one that was, quick to get emotional. And for the longest time, I thought I was wrong. I thought I was wrong by doing that. And I think what a lot of Black men do now is that they forget that they're human.
Yes.
They try to fit into this mold of, hey, you can't get angry because you'll be the angry Black man. And you can't cry or show emotion or say you can't do something because that will make you weak. And then you have men on both sides of the spectrum that are they're yearning for someone just to understand them.
Yeah.
And that's where I figured, if someone sees me talking about it, if someone sees, if they look at another Black man saying, I was depressed, or I was sad, or I was lonely, or I was just being vulnerable, just saying the words they never were able to say, maybe that'll allow them to do the same thing.
That's so powerful, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely true, and it cuts across. It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
In the UK, what you've described, we see it here. Men don't allow themselves to be vulnerable, and I think that persona of getting things out. It's interesting. Last weekend, I was following up a young person with ADHD who came for their medication review, and he came with his father there from, the Nigerian community. And this young person was not doing much better now. But it was the questions about, when is he going to stop these medicines? And because it was already, when we look at things and we think it's a sign of weakness for you to accept that you've got something. It's a sign of weakness for you to be taking medication to help you do the things that you should, in quote, be doing well. And I think that's been a major barrier for a lot of the families I've seen, where if there's been an obstruction to accepting to come forward for an assessment, it's mainly been sometimes the father who has said, no, there's nothing wrong with him. He just needs to be stronger. He just needs to do X, Y, Z. So it takes a while for people from our community to realize that actually that young person, that young boy is really struggling. And when the negatives are coming out at school and the young person is being excluded, they even go harder on them. The common phrase I hear is, no, doctor, we don't have that in our family. No, we do. It's not in our generation. It doesn't happen. That's a common phrase I hear amongst the Black community. It's really, and it's just good that you have traced that. I think you tracing that just helps us to take a step back to think, actually, they are modeling what they saw growing up.
Yep.
And that's what they've been modeling. And going back to the therapeutic, you had therapy, and how was that process? How was that process of therapy?
So the first time I ever went to a therapist, I was in college. I was 18 or 19. And I remember just not feeling like I belonged, not feeling comfortable at college. I was with a bunch of soccer players that they ate, slept, breathed soccer. All they want to do is play soccer. Very, very alpha male type players I was around. And again, like I'm trying to fit into this mold of being this quote unquote, alpha male. And it wasn't who I was.
Mm.
And I remember the first time walking into a therapist's office and not knowing what to expect. I just knew I needed to talk to somebody at that point. And it was eye-opening to like have somebody who just listened. Like I could just talk and talk
Mm.
and talk. Because in human interaction, like I was a sociology major, and so in human interaction, like we don't really listen to the person talk. We just wait for our turn to talk. So it's very rare that someone listens to exactly what you're saying. And so
Mm.
it was very nice to have that. And then I hadn't had therapy until the story I talked about earlier with veering my car off. And at that moment, the therapist I went to was very cold, rigid. I went through AEP, which I don't know if you have it in the UK, but it's assisted employment. Um, that we have here that we get through our healthcare, where we can call a number and get therapy. And I went through that. And of course, it wasn't something that I got to pick. It was something that was provided for me. And I went to an office and I sat maybe 20 feet away from this man, and he just took notes the whole time and didn't really give me any feedback. And after 3 sessions, he was like, all right, well, that's all they pay for. So
Oh,
good luck
wow.
to you. And, one, I didn't, at the time, I really didn't know what was happening. And two, I had the impression at that point, like, oh, there was going to be an end date to this. Like there was going to be like, somebody's going to cure my depression. Someone's going to cure my anxiety. It's going to all go away one day. So that's the feeling I had about it. And, after I got fired from this particular job, and I deserved every bit of it, I kind of laugh at the person I was, or the employee I was, not the person, employee I was. But I remember saying, let me give therapy one more chance, because every day was a struggle when I was in my
Mm.
late 20s. And I sat down with a great therapist in Virginia at the time. And again, very empathetic, very soothing, very just, I could talk about anything. And I remember getting like 3 sessions in, and then 4 sessions, and then 5. And then and so finally one day I was like, all right, so I guess we'll be ending these things soon. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, my last therapist, we ended after 3. He's like, no, well, no, like we can end our sessions when you feel comfortable and when we've made progress. But he's like, there's no end date to this.
Mm.
And I was just like, what's happening right? Like, again, my brain's like, what's happening right now? Like, why is he going out of his way to be so nice to me? Like, that's how I thought to
Mm.
myself. I was like, why is he going out of his way to be nice to me? And he's literally just doing his job, but he did it so well and made me feel so comfortable. And that was probably a year of my life where I just sat down and put it all on the table. I was told about anxiety, the first time in my life where anxiety and depression were used by a therapist with me,
Wow.
because I had heard them, I had felt them, but it's like, I don't have that. But when he said those words, it all became real. And that's when the real work, I was able to start the real work and start to think about my mental health, perpetually every day, to think about what I could do.
So that's an important lesson because you've had good and bad therapy,
Mhm.
and it's amazing what proper therapy working with you, working through that process, not setting like a
Mhm.
fixed timeline, but
Yep.
just working with you, how it made an improvement. So would you say the improvement was kind of gradual
Yes.
with the therapy?
It was definitely gradual, because you have to still remember, like, I'm still very closed off at this point.
Mm.
Like, there's things I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about the relationship I had with my mom at the time, which wasn't great. And I love my
Mm.
mom, and rest in peace. But like, I was so close to my mom growing up, and I hated the fact that we weren't at a good spot. And I never, ever brought it up until like he almost had to get it out of me.
Mm.
And I remember he was the one that made the suggestion that I write a letter to my mom. Don't send it to her, but write a letter to her. And then when I see her the next time, try to incorporate my feelings into a conversation with her. And I was so scared. Like, I cannot tell you how scared I was to have this conversation with my mom. And
Mm,
I was scared to read the letter to my therapist. Like, I was scared to write the whole step of the way. I was scared, but
mm,
the whole step away, he made me feel comfortable, and he didn't force me to do anything I didn't want to do. But he
mm,
did understand that this was a big part of my life that was like keeping a chokehold on me, because
mm,
I valued the relationship I had with my mom so much, and I didn't have it at that moment.
mm. And did that make you feel better? How did your mom
So, oh my
take
God,
it?
it was, you know, anxiety is one of those things it's the fear of the unknown, and sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
unjustified. And after that conversation, in my head, I'm like, why didn't I do this a year ago?
Yeah.
Why didn't I do this so much sooner? Because it was just so it was
Freeing,
such a
isn't
good,
it?
oh my God,
Mm,
and from that moment on, I never had an issue with my mother ever again. I just knew
mm,
if I needed to say something to her, I could, and we would just get past it. So that was
mm.
it was so just it lifted a huge weight off my chest.
Wow,
Mhm,
I think that's a lesson for so many
mhm,
people as well. There's so many people working through difficult relationships who've not been able to work. I think what you have just said is such a really powerful, and the fact that you had somebody who was confidently working through that process with you,
mhm.
because I guess if you were left on your own to do it, you probably would not have gotten
No.
down to do it.
No, I was living 10 hours away from my mom at the time, my mom and dad at the time, and I would just see them on holidays, and I'd get through it, and I just figured this is what's gonna happen from now on. But
Mm,
having someone who's able to not force you to do something, but kind of ask you the right questions,
mm,
ask you what you want out of your relationship, ask you what you could do, ask you what mistakes you think the other person made. Do you think you can forgive them? Would you want them to forgive you? Like, so it's always the questioning is always the best part of that.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a powerful story. I really appreciate it. Um, Now you talked about your body, your weight and how things were at that time, and you successfully lost about 100 pounds. That is amazing to lose that amount of body weight. How did you go about that? And because I think that has helped you as well and continues to help you and motivate you.
So I keep that number there as a reminder, because I didn't keep all that weight off, because the last part of it wasn't the healthiest way to do it. And I keep that number as a reminder to tell people that focusing on the number only can do more harm than good. And so I always wanted to be a runner. Like, my dad was a runner. He ran for fun and ran some 10Ks and half marathons and stuff like that. And I always wanted to emulate that version of my dad. So one day I just shut down my computer after work and went out and ran. And I'm glad there's no video of me doing that, because it was it was not pretty. I remember running past a bus that had mirrored windows, and I remember looking at myself and being like, "What happened? Like, what happened?" But on the way home, I had to walk past the bus, but I told myself at that moment, I was like, "This is your starting point. Like, that you're never gonna feel that way going past a mirror again." And I started running as much as I could, and I changed my nutrition. I started, not eating late at night. I started eating more vegetables and proteins, things like that, and the weight really started to come off. And I went from really enjoying it to becoming addicted to it. I lost 40 pounds pretty quickly. Like, I think I started in January, and by the summer I was down 40 pounds. And then by the fall I was down 75 pounds. And then in my head I'm like, keep going, keep going, keep going. And to a point where then I had lost 100 pounds, and then I lost 110 pounds and 115 pounds. And I ended up breaking my foot because a stress fracture of just doing the same thing over and over again. And I wasn't eating as much as I should have been. So I got really, really skinny and unhealthy, to a point where, like, my friends were saying something about it to me. Like, hey man, like we get it. Like we get it. Like, you're okay. And I remember being so depressed because I broke my foot and I had to have surgery and I couldn't run for about 6 months. And getting back to running, I was running hurt every day. There was pain in my foot every day when I ran, but I had to run. And then I had a second surgery. And after my second surgery, it felt so much better. But then I lost all this weight. And I remember just not feeling good about myself and talking to my therapist on the phone and telling him, like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I lost all this weight. Why don't I feel great? And he asked me straight up, he's like, did you think when you lost the weight that you would just you just suddenly feel better? Like you take care of your mental health? And I was honest with him. I'm like, yes, like that's exactly what I thought. I thought if I looked better in the mirror, I would. But the thing I never realized is like, I was never seeing the new version of myself. Every time I looked in the mirror, I was still seeing the overweight, depressed Marc Paisant. That's who I was seeing. And I had never, ever forgiven that person. I was so hateful. I had so much hate towards that person that I still saw him, that I was running away from him, that I was trying to lose more and more weight, that I never became that person ever again. And at that moment, that's when we really started talking about forgiving the person I was. Like he didn't hate you, so there's no reason to hate him. And that was the moment that everything kind of clicked for me. And I started, when I went to the gym or went out for a run, I didn't start to run away from my problems or run away from who I was anymore. And it really was just, that was an immediate thing. That was, hey, today I'm not going to run away from my stress. I'm not going to run away from my job. I'm not going to run away from my personal issues. I'm going to lean into them. I'm going to think about them on the run. I'm going to think about them in the gym. And that's the moment I realized like how mental health and physical health play a part. They play a part with each other and they need each other. And since that moment fluctuated in weight, I've gone up, I've gone down, I've done more cardio or done more whatever. But at no point have I ever been like infatuated with a number on a scale or trying to run away from the person I was, because I've truly started to like love the person I am now because of that shift in thinking. It will especially, like I tell people right now, if you're going to start a fitness journey, like if you want a baseline, I get it, but get the number, put it away. Because if you're doing it the right way, you may actually gain weight at the beginning and then start to lose it. But it's not about the numbers on the scale. It's about your feeling and how you feel when you wake up in the morning or if you're able to get to sleep at night. Like it's the numbers don't match up all the time. They're telling you the truth. They're telling you the truth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a great question because I think, of all the people I've talked to on my show, whether it be about mental health or physical health, they've all brought up the three things that they haven't done it on purpose, but it seems like everyone believes and understands these three things are so important. It's, our nutrition, what we're putting in our body and how we're hydrating. It's our activity level and that's our rest and recovery, how we're sleeping. So with those things, like we have to be mindful when we eat, especially when we're on our fitness journey. Like we want to make sure we're not just eating. We think about when we're eating, but we think about like why and how we feel when we're eating. And then we have to make sure that we're, our rest days, we take them and that we make sure that we look at the sleep we're getting, the times we're going to sleep, the time we're waking up, things like that. But at the same time, I think the thing we forget sometimes is that we don't just go like what I was doing. When I felt stressed, I would just put on my running shoes and go for a run. And try not to think about why I was stressed. Try not to think about the things that were going on in my life. And the funny part about it is I'd come back to that stress. I'd come back to that anxiety. I would come back and I'd almost lose what I gained on my run. So just a simple thing of changing our mindset. I am running because I need to help with my stress. And I have these three things going on at work. I have this thing going on in my life. I need to be physically active, but at the same time, how can I use this to better myself? How can I use this? The thing that was helping me, and I tell people all the time, is the first time I went on a run and leaned into my stress, I came back refreshed and I came back with like 3 different resolution strategies for what I need to get through, my stress at the time. So I tell people like always, like don't just go to the gym and try to lift a few weights or get on the treadmill and say, I've done it. I've checked. Like, I think what got me in trouble is just the check boxes. Got, got in shape, check. Bought the house, check. Got married, check. Had the kids, check. Got the car, check. Everything was check. But I was just checking the boxes. I wasn't taking the time to be mindful about why these things were important to me. Like, why was it important that I get in shape? Oh, well, I want to be a dad that's active with his kids. I want to make sure that I'm around for them as long as possible. Why do I just check the box on the house I bought? I want a foundation for my family. This is more than a house. This is a home. This is what I want. So mindful activities have to have that why behind it. And the why is not, I want that 150 to turn into 140. That's not a why. That's just, A to B. That's all that is. A why is like, I want to be able to, breathe better. Or I've dealt with these breathing issues. It hurts every time I have to get up because I have this extra weight on my knees. I want to and listen, your why can be vanity. I'll be honest with you. If you want to look better at the beach, that is a totally fine why. I'm not going to tell anybody not to have that as a why. All right. Because that why doesn't mean that you lose all this weight. That why actually means that you're getting in shape and feeling better about your body. And it might be one of those mental health issues where it's like, I've seen plenty of people who are in shape, but still cover up at the beach because they don't. So again, mindful activities has to do with putting a why behind everything. Just go to my website, marcpaisant.com, MarcPaisant.com, and that has all the links to my socials and my shows, all the podcast shows. You can get them right there. Just make it really easy for you. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I really enjoyed the conversation with you.
As we always say, early intervention leads to better outcome, and early intervention can only be achieved by early diagnosis. So thank you for listening into the series today. I know some of the things we've talked about today would probably have generated some questions or need to seek clarification. So I'm happy to take questions, and I'll invite you to send your questions to eim@drtakon.com. Thank you for listening in.